Hello, and welcome to PRSA Silicon Valley's Friday Forum, the industry's team meeting. I'm Jeannie Enton, President-elect of PRSA Silicon Valley, and today's topic is the World Economic Forum 101, Getting Your Company Noticed. We'll get started with Karen Cage, PRSA Silicon Valley board member, founder of KLD Consulting, and former industry fellow for the WEF, who will lead the conversation. Welcome, Karen.
Thanks very much, Jeannie. I am excited to be here. As you all can see, there is a poll up. If you would take that while I'm doing the intro, that would be awesome. As Jeannie said, I was an industry fellow for the World Economic Forum, and my goal for this meeting today is for you to walk away with actionable information that you can actually use. I want to make sure that we are starting on the same page with what the World Economic Forum is. As you can see from the question, there's a range of people and a range of information that they know about it. But what I want to make sure we understand is the World Economic Forum is an organization. They are best known for their annual meeting, which they host in Davos, Switzerland in January. But they're not interchangeable. So I want you to set Davos aside. We're not going to talk about Davos. We may have stories about Davos, but that's not the topic today. The topic today is about the World Economic Forum and the organization itself. So with that, I want to do an introduction about the forum. It was founded in 1971 by Professor Klaus Schwab, who you see here on the left. He is a professor, and he understood that the problems that we were facing in the world were not going to be solved by any one group. It wasn't going to be solved by businesses. It wasn't going to be solved by companies, that everybody needed to work together to solve the problems that were facing the world. And so he brought together a group of people in Davos in 1971, and that was the beginning of the forum. The forum has evolved today. I know there's a lot of stories about it, and there's a lot of perceptions about it. But as one who's worked there, I can tell you honestly that their goal is, although they call themselves the International Organization for Public-Private Cooperation, their goal is to bring together governments, businesses, and civil society to improve the state of the world. And so in order to do that, they have corporate members. So some of you in the audience may have clients who are members, your executives may be members, your companies, and they bring together thought leaders. There's about 1,000 corporate members, 1,000 thought leaders, about 100 countries participate. And the work that they do, which has really evolved, I would say in the last 5 to 7 years, honestly, is again, to improve the state of the world, doing that by addressing and supporting achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So with that as background, I'll share just a little bit more about the forum so we have a grounding before we get into some of the cool stuff that's there. The forum itself has a lot of work that they do. The annual meeting, the one we're not going to talk about, honestly represents about 5% of all the work that they do. And that meeting is when they come together and they talk about what they accomplished last year and what their goals are for next year. And they break that into 3 broad categories: industry transformation, in service of humanity, and governance. And within each of these, there are a host of platforms and programs that people participate in. Things from Center of Cybersecurity to shaping the future of energy and materials, the future of consumption, the future of mobility. And each one of these, they refer to them as platforms. Each one of these platforms has many, many projects underneath it. So this just gives you a sense of the breadth of work that they do. In service of humanity is where the social and environmental impact work happens. So unlike industry, this is for everybody across all sectors. And then the one I found interesting was governance, because they do have a group of cross stakeholders, multiple stakeholders from policy, cybersecurity, industry, government, working together in advance of new technologies to set up guidelines and guide rules so that bad actors don't do the worst, so that we have some protocol as these new technologies are emerging. And for those of us sitting in the actual Silicon Valley, this is pretty important to know. So this is what most people think of the forum as. This is one meeting that happens in January. But there are actually meetings that happen all year. A couple of big meetings that happen, that these are CEO level meetings that people attend, would be the new champions in China and the International Business Council. Those are great, but where the action really happens from my perspective is in the other meetings that happen. There are meetings for specific communities, like the Chief Human Resources community. There's meetings for industry strategy officers to meet and talk about specific issues within their industry. And for those of you who are members of the forum, have clients who are members of the forum, I want to highlight the regional meetings, because when you start talking about business impact and understanding how the forum can help you drive business, these are the meetings where there's a lot of connection. It's kind of like Davos Light. Davos, the annual meeting, is where all the CEOs and the heads of states go. And the regional meetings are more intimate, and it's more related to the issues and needs specific to a region. So I'll give you a story. When I was at HP, I managed our relationship with the World Economic Forum. The forum had a meeting in South Africa, and so our managing director for South Africa attended the forum. She had a passion about gender and women, and HP had a passion around education. It's not only part of our values, but it's a value proposition that we offer to the educational industry. So she attended the Africa Forum and spoke on a panel about gender and education. As a result of her speaking on that panel and of attending other panels where she met people from the region who were working on the issues that were going to further Africa's development, she was invited to attend and participate in the Africa Growth Council. Now, if you're thinking about what you need to do to grow a region, you need education, you need economic stability, you need industry. And so in that council, she had the opportunity to present to 65 ministers of industry. It's ministers of education across Africa. And she said to me after this, she said, in my whole career, maybe I would get to 5 of them, but never 65. And it was a result of participating in a regional event that most people don't pay attention to if they're members. And not only that, but as a result of that presentation and that participation, she then had governments and education ministers contacting her and saying, hey, we have an RFP coming up. We like the value proposition that HP has to offer, and we'd like to talk to you more about that. So this is just an example. Doesn't guarantee it'll happen for everybody. And there are some things that happen much better. But for those of you who are members, who participate in this, don't forget, this is where there's some really great opportunities for you. So now I'm going to switch gears. The PRSA Silicon Valley is hosting this. And so I know that we have a bunch of communicators and marketers in the crowd. We also have some startup folks. I know we have a couple of executive coaches. So there's something for everybody in here, but I want to highlight a couple of things that I think are particularly interesting for communicators. Whether you are a member of the forum or not, whether you are a small company or a big company, a startup or a well-established brand, everything I'm about to share is for all of you. So the first thing is, if you're doing executive prep, you're getting your executive ready for a meeting, you want to know what the conversations are, you want to know what the thought leaders are. On the forum's website, they have lots of content from their prior events that they've attended. You can look at what the agendas were, who spoke, you can listen to many of the sessions. And in fact, one of the things, this is a sidelight for everybody, but one of the things that technology has allowed is it has allowed the World Economic Forum to actually live stream many of their meetings. So one of the reasons there was this mystique and criticism about it being exclusive was simply based on the fact that there's no way to share all of this information, and now there is. So this is a great place to go just to find out topics, to do preparation and information for your execs. But the better one is the some of the thought leadership activities. So there are podcasts that they do, and there's a variety of topics. So you can have a Meet the Leader podcast, you can have a Let's Fix It podcast. If you happen to work for a publisher or you have an executive who's an author, they actually have a book club podcast. And so submitting and applying to have your executive be a part of this is something that you can do. But the bigger opportunity, I think, is the agenda blog. So the World Economic Forum, as you know, is a global platform. They have millions of viewers on their website every day. And this picture that I just put up is from the homepage of their website. So the homepage of their website includes portions of the agenda blog, which is where all of the thought leaders of the world post articles, contributed content, research report, and you can submit your content to be a part of this. You don't have to be a member. I can share a link with you. And not only do they have a link where you can submit information, but they will tell you what the successful articles are and give you recommendations for how to approach it to increase the likelihood of having your submission accepted. So if you're a communicator whose focus is on earned media and you're not using this outlet, you're missing a huge opportunity, because the viewership and the reach of this platform is exponentially greater than pretty much everything that's out there, and puts your company and your executives in the company of the best of the best. So as I said, there are also resources for everybody. There are things for individuals. There are things for multinationals. I don't think I said it at the beginning, but the membership criteria has historically been a multinational company with sales of $5 billion or more, which is probably not most of us on this call. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that group, because everything I share, they already have access to. So if they're not using it, that's on them. But I can understand why you all may not be using it, because you may not know that it's available. This on the slide is just a sampling of what's available. But what I want to do is talk about 3 areas in particular: the strategic intelligence platform, their communities, and then specifically, because we're in the Silicon Valley, their innovation communities. The strategic intelligence platform is a hub for information research, articles on almost any topic you can think of. This is a screen capture from their website, and there are 292 rectangles that look like this, each one of them representing a topic for which there is content from white papers and research to articles and contributed content. That's cool. We can get that from Google or AI if we want to search for it. But what you don't get with them is this map. So again, lots of information here, mouse type. I don't expect you to read it. I just want to talk through the left side and the right side. So let's pretend on the previous slide that I clicked on innovation. I wanted to learn more about innovation. The first thing you're going to see is what they call a transformation map. And that's what outlines all of the other topics that are drivers or influencers under the topic of innovation. So it could be biotechnology, it could be digital communications, it could be 3D printing. All of these topics are related to the topic of innovation. If you look on the right-hand side, what you see is all of the content that's available. And you can see each one of these has show more. This is dynamically generated. So if you click on it today, and then you go back in a week, there's going to be different content because there will have been new things published. So really great information. Now let me pretend, and I'm only going to do one more slide. I'm not going to take you through a whole demo, but let's pretend that I click on artificial intelligence because I want to delve into that aspect of innovation. And what I get is an entirely new map with entirely new reference points and influence points and an entirely new set of content. So you get the idea. This is specific, it's curated. Again, there are lots of resources out there and lots of information, but this is really, really curated and it's mapped. This is scientific, this is research quality information. Now, last thing, and maybe this is exciting to me because I'm a bit of a dork, but you'll notice over here, one of the articles that I could read is from the Harvard Business Review. I love the Harvard Business Review. I will often find an article on the Harvard Business Review or on the website, and I'll read it and it'll say, click here for another article. And then I get that sign that says, you've exceeded your one free article per month, please subscribe. And as much as I love the Harvard Business Review, I can't justify subscribing. I won't read it that much. But when I access information through the World Economic Forum Strategic Intelligence Platform, everything is open to us, the full content. And not only for this one article, but if there were 17 articles on this particular topic, I could read all of them. So not only is it a great source of resource, it's great access to content that may not always be available without a subscription. The next area I want to talk about is community. So while the strategic intelligence platform was really intense and really great knowledge and information, this is a combination of great information and kind of affinities. So there's arts and culture. There's a book club. You can actually join a book club and see what books people are reading that are related to ways in which we can make the world a better place. I'm going to not go through all of these, but I do want to highlight the innovator community because this is the community that we all sit in. And I'm guessing that all of you at some point in your life have worked with, have lived with, or have been friends with an innovator. And so I want to make sure and not the innovators that are successful and are now the $5 billion companies, the innovators that are trying to make it work and trying to figure it out. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this area, showing you what's possible because this is available. Again, everything I've shown you so far is available for all of you to use. This first one is called Uplink, and this is a very new platform, and it's targeted kind of as think of it as a matchmaking. There are people who have the desire to have an impact and to make change, whether it's creating more sustainability within forests, whether it is figuring out how to do, food ecosystems in an arid climate. They want to do that, but they're not sure how to get there. Or they know they need help to get there, but they've got the funding, they've got the backing to do that. And they want to invite anybody who has that capability to come and partner with them. And so what the forum does is they put up challenges. Any of you who are innovators who have an idea that you think is, positioned to have a positive impact on any of these topics can apply. And when the project is approved, you are matched with the donors, but also with additional resources that, again, the forum is a great convener. The resources they convene are available for you and will support you in this endeavor. The last area I want to talk about is the innovator communities. And again, we think about those $5 billion plus companies as historically being the members and the participants in the World Economic Forum. Well, it's $500 billion plus corporations, then academics, nonprofits, civil society. But from a corporate perspective, we think of the 5 billion. If you are an innovator or a technology person and you have an idea, an innovation, a product, a solution that is poised to have a positive impact in the world, you can actually apply to be a tech pioneer with the forum. and you would receive a 2-year membership to participate in the program and work on your idea and be a contributing member on par with the multinational corporations. This is application. So you're not guaranteed to get in, but there is no reason that you can't apply if this is of interest to you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this one because we have a tech pioneer who's going to join me in a minute. Global Innovators is an additional organization. This is invitation only. This is another community. And then the last one I want to share because I think it's another way of demonstrating the change that the World Economic Forum has made. Again, it started as an academic organization. They were perceived to be very academic, very theoretical, lots of white papers, no action. They really have changed. And what they have realized is that the companies, the organizations, the people who are going to drive change in the future aren't necessarily $5 billion companies today. And so they have a new membership specifically for companies, again, who have unique insights, who are in a position to have a global impact, and they can be full members of the forum without that $5 billion hurdle. So with that, I know I ran through that very quickly. I want to introduce, I'm going to stop my share. I want to introduce Carl Vause, who is the CEO of Hyalex Orthopedics, to join me. Carl and I met when we were a part of the World Economic Forum. We actually worked on the same platform together. I was from the big company. I was from HP, and Carl was from a small company. So before we get into the questions and the conversation, Carl, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Karen. So my name is Carl Vause. I'm currently with Hyalex Orthopedics. And when I was with the forum, I was with a very early stage robotics startup that we were focused on really the food supply chain, food scarcity. So bringing in AI, robotics, and food scarcity kind of hit on a lot of important platforms that you saw Karen cover. We learned about the Tech Pioneers program, applied, were accepted, and spent 2 great years in that program, working and contributing and learning. And then I stayed on as a platform fellow for advanced manufacturing.
So how did you even know to apply for this, Carl? Because I wouldn't have known.
Yeah. Oddly enough, it was a PR person who knew about the program. They were actually an advisor to one of our investors, and they said, look, we think what you're doing would be interesting to the forum. We think you should apply. And they helped us put together the package, which is not onerous in any way, shape, or form, and apply.
That is awesome. I didn't know that. I just knew that you were there. So the process wasn't difficult. You were accepted. Then what happened?
And so I kind of retrospect, looking back, I think it's more of it's not an award as it is an invitation. And so the first thing you do is you go through, you have to accept it and have to say, okay, I'm going to contribute. I'm going to play by the rules, and be part of the forum, which is important. And then they invite you to a summer meeting, which is the new champions meeting that you mentioned. And you get a chance to present to the attendees of your company, the problem you're trying to solve. And it's really important because I think one of the things, if I was, I tell startups this all the time, in Silicon Valley, and when we're startups out raising money, we're always kind of on our back heel, right? And there's always the pecking order in Silicon Valley. You've got the big companies, you got the VCs, and the startups are all clamoring to get the meetings. What the forum does is they bring the tech pioneers in and the startups in because the big companies want to know what the cutting edge is. They want to make that connection. And so when you're a tech pioneer at the forum, you're not a small company in a room with big company folks. Everybody is on a level playing field, and they want to hear everyone's position, whether you're a small company, big company, government, or an NGO. And then from there, I got invited to work on a couple of key initiatives. And so I got put on the working groups, primarily around advanced manufacturing and then the future of the workforce, because we were trying to solve the problem of if automation and robotics is the future, we've got to educate. We've got a skills gap. So that's how I got plugged in with Karen and the working group she was on. And really, it was a matter of a lot of times me saying, look, this is the skills apps we see. This is why people aren't adopting these technologies. And you kind of get brought into the conversation and allowed to contribute and put the work in and go from there.
So I want to pick up on that because you and I
Yes.
had an interesting conversation the other day about the future of work.
Yes.
And you and I were at the same meeting in New York when we had multiple industries there, and we were talking about work. And I want to highlight two things. Number one, from a large company perspective, this was an opportunity for our chief human resources officer to participate and to have a voice and to have a role in the forum. And so as you're thinking about corporate engagement in the forum, remember that there are opportunities for lots of people in your company. That's number one. Number two, what I found interesting was, as you said, we all have similar skills gap. We had aerotech, we had CPG, we had high tech, we had oil and gas, and some of the common issues were the same. They needed reskilling, they needed AI people. The one that shocked me was, because I worked at a technology company at the time, was this feeling that there was no common definition for digital literacy.
Right.
And so because all of the industries had the same issue, I think that's how our team, the team you and I worked on, ended up picking up digital literacy and trying to create a definition around that we could then share back with the other industries. So I think that's the other point. If I didn't say it before, and maybe Carl, you said it, the annual meeting is 5% of what they do. This is where the work happens. And this is where the engagement is.
No, I think here that's a really good example because I'm now remembering a lot of the discussions we were in were really trying to get to a common understanding. And when you've got people from all over the world, so different cultures, different backgrounds, people from large multinationals, startups, NGOs, trade union representatives, those are some really, I would say, interesting conversations. And it's definitely not a kumbaya. It is a lot of good mixing up. And one of the things I took away from that was appreciating the different perspectives and then how everyone brings that to get to a common agreement of what is digital literacy? What are we talking about here? How are we going to move forward on this?
What was your perspective? Because I know one of the concerns folks have expressed in the past is, well, I have trade secrets. I don't want to be in a room with all of my competitors. What was your perspective on that?
I think there's competitive information, but at the same time, what I saw is when we got in the room, everybody had very similar problems, right? It was, okay, I can't hire people with this background, or I've got a knowledge gap at this level of management, or I need to retrain management. And what was interesting is I saw huge competitors, some of the biggest companies in the world that were competitive, coming together to try and figure this stuff out, because a lot of the work that we were doing was just foundational. And I think you were on this project as well, is how do we work with the policymakers to really understand how the education of the future is not what we're doing right now? How do we reshape what we see as education? And I forget the great line. Well, it's not education, it's skills, which sounds silly, but we need to rethink how we're educating the workforce of the future. And I can tell you that room was full of competitive companies, and they were all in on trying to figure this out.
Yes, I do remember a couple of the online learning companies in particular. Let me just pause for a second. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we have one question. That question is, are the resources that you mentioned in your intro deck free, Karen? free for companies.
Yes, they are. So the strategic intelligence platform is available if you look that up. And I afterwards, if anybody wants this presentation, if they want direct links to the information I shared, I've pulled that together and I'm happy to send that to you. But yes, you can go online today, you can register and you can use the strategic intelligence platform. Are there pay options where you get more opportunities? Yes, there are. And I paid, but I haven't even been using the things that I paid for because everything I needed is in what's available. I'm also going to say, I'm just going to give one more plug for those of you who are members out there. If you're a member, you have access to this already. You have full access. You don't have to pay for it. And when I was at a big company, we had access and I didn't know that and I didn't use it. I actually learned about it from a guy who was at a startup who told me at a recreational meeting, like not even a business meeting, we were struck up a conversation at a picnic, that he had used the strategic intelligence platform to generate the proof points and collect all of the research data supporting his innovation. So yes, long answer, yes. Any other questions?
Not at this
Karen,
juncture.
oh,
Go
Karen, I
ahead.
just want to jump in and kind of tie 2 points together. One of the projects that I worked on was called the lighthouse, the factory lighthouse, the lighthouse factory in the future. I should know this, but it was kind of insane where we said, look, we have big company CEOs who are saying, I need to digitize, I need to digital transform, I need to across the industry, but they didn't know what examples of best practice were. And so the forum brought a group together and said, we're going to create a public award that's going to be competitive and hard to get. There is a jury that reviews these, and they're very, very brutal on these applications. But if you receive this award, you have to be willing to open up and describe the use case, the transformation, the technology used, the metrics out of that. And I remember in the first discussions about this, they're like, well, no one's ever going to do that. And today, I think we're coming up on 100 lighthouses. It's all online. You can download who's a lighthouse, what were their use cases, what technologies did they use, how did they apply it? And you can literally just take a best practice of, oh, I need this application for temperature control and aqueous processing, something glamorous like that. And you can go and see what Unilever did in their Dubai shampoo plant and how they did it. And to me, that was fascinating because now you've got just not competitors in the room, but people openly publishing, open sourcing these huge transformational use cases just for the broader contribution to the knowledge.
I forgot about that. That is
Yeah.
really awesome. And I actually, when you were saying that, I remembered that when I was helping prepare the CEO to attend a meeting, I actually I pulled down the report that had every single lighthouse in it and all of the metrics they used. So even for, I know we've got a lot of innovators and executive coaches, but for folks who are data scientists, or they are engineers trying to figure out what the metrics are that you want to use to justify a spend, there's tons of information there. That's a really great point. I forgot about that. Thank you. So tell me about what this did for organization. I'm sorry. We just got a question. Can you provide some numbers on the number of organizations that participate? Hold on one second. I missed that. I apologize. Can you provide some numbers on the number of organizations that participate to these groups? So I think what you're referencing here, Judy, is there may be two things. I'm going to answer two things, and Carl, feel free to weigh in. The first one is how many corporate members are there? So from a corporate perspective, there are about 1,000 corporate members of the forum. And then there's another 1,000 or so thought leaders, academia, civil society, the labor unions and those kinds of organizations. However, what that doesn't take into account are the number of organizations that apply to participate in some of these programs. So Carl, do you know how many, do you have any idea how many people apply to be a tech pioneer?
In our year, it was 6,000 companies applied.
Okay. So a lot of people apply. And then the other question that Judy may be asking, which I'll answer, is if you go back to the slide that I shared, which talked about industry transformation, and it talked about all of those platforms. So the platform that Carl and I worked on was called Shaping the Future of Advanced Manufacturing and Production. And within that platform, I would say we probably had 50 really engaged companies. Does that seem right, Carl?
That seems about right. Yes.
And those companies were large. There were large automotive companies. There were, Carl's smaller company, smaller robotics company, all working together. That is one of the secrets of success with a forum, from my perspective, is to actually do the work. One of the criticisms I heard once is, I don't want to participate in the forum because they want you to do all the work. That's exactly the point, right? The forum doesn't want to be the end all be all. They don't claim to be the end all be all. What they're really good at is convening the right people and supporting them and enabling them and giving them infrastructure and pulling in resources to help them accomplish what they need to accomplish. Any other questions? Do you have anything to add to that, Carl?
I just couldn't agree more. I think that what they do best is they pull together groups and discuss topics that I don't know other organizations can do. And you will have you will walk into these meeting rooms, which are the majority are Chatham House rules. So there's no public notes. There's no Carl said this, Karen said this. It is really an open forum, and you'll walk in and you'll see competitors and you'll see people from different ends of the political spectrum, and you're like, oh, this is going to get interesting. And then pretty quickly you get into just identifying the problem, naming the problem, and trying to get a path ahead, because in the end, we actually share more common problems than probably differences. And that's one of the things that I always took away.
Yeah. What did you find most surprising? I want to make sure we leave time for questions at the end, but I have a couple questions for you. So what did you find most surprising about your experience as a small company and as a tech pioneer?
I think the big, kind of one of the big moments for me is when we did that first meeting at the New Champions. You kind of have this tech pioneer intro, and they bring in a former tech pioneer, and is this woman named Marjolaine Hedler, who's just a fantastic person. If you get a chance to ever spend time with Marjolaine, I highly recommend you do it. But she said, look, you have agency at the forum. You are here because you are seen as an equal contributor. And so don't do this, oh, I'm a startup, I hope somebody talks to me. Is if you feel passionate about something, stand up. And that was the most true piece of advice I ever got, which is, it's, a lot of times startups are in things, and the academics are like, oh, you're a small startup, or big companies are like, what do you know? I run a multi-billion-dollar company. At the forum, they're like, you're in the room, we want to hear your position, because we may be missing it, right? Not saying that CEOs of large startups get filtered, or large companies get filtered information, but it was a chance for everyone to learn from each other. So that was the thing that just really blew me away. It's like, wow, Marjolaine was exactly right. Is they really do want to know our opinion, our thoughts, and help shape the conversation. The second point is this was right when the whole robots are taking everybody's job thing was going on. And I found myself in this working group one day, and here's the head of the largest trade union in the world. And I'm like, oh no, Like, I'd been in these meetings in Detroit and they didn't go well. And now I'm in Europe and it's that common problem. You're like, okay, I remember the actual quote that this person said to me was, a closed factory employs no one. So I've got to figure out how to keep my companies competitive so that I can keep my people employed. This isn't about an us or them. It's how do we work together to keep people meaningfully employed. And that just blew me away, because that was not the reaction we had been having from other folks in that part of the business.
That's awesome. So as a tech pioneer, what did this do for your company, your company's reputation, your professional reputation?
That's, I guess that's the benefit that is real is, when you're in the room with all these big companies, you really are on, it's your chance to make your case. And what came out of it is a lot of folks who we would never have gotten access to would come up at the end of one of these sessions and say, hey, I want to learn more, or can you come down and meet my executive staff, or can you point me in the direction of somebody, or can you get someone in to look at my operations? And so it really does elevate your reputation. I think that's part of the Tech Pioneer program, is to not just get this, the small startups in the room, but to actually give them a chance to shine and move forward. And I, to this day, I still get invited to help the forum out at times and do things like this. Thank you, Karen. And it really was something. But the caveat there is, as you said earlier, you got to do the work, right? Do the work, show up, and it from a reputational standpoint. And I'm invited to invite only robot things next week, and I've been out of robotics really for 3 years now, back in the devices. And they're like, no, you got to come, Carl. So it's been great.
That's awesome. Well, I will say, even from a big company perspective, being in the room matters. And I want to clarify, when we're talking about being in the room, we're not talking about that thing that happens in January.
No.
We're talking about all the other rooms that happen all year long. When I was at HP, we had not participated in a platform in this way. And so when we wanted to get into advanced manufacturing, I'm saying we because I was a part of the company at the time, when the company wanted to get into advanced manufacturing, we decided to participate in the platform. And we did have a representative at every single meeting in ways that we had not done before. And there was still questions about, is this valuable? What are we doing? Are we getting something out of this? And so I asked the guy, I said, I don't have any vested interest in this. If this is not a good use of your time, then what is it? What do you want to do? Should we quit? Should we keep going? What do you want to do? And he said, oh my gosh. He said, he's a big company guy with a big company reputation. And he said, I am getting phone calls from people that wouldn't even talk to me before. He created partnerships with some of those big companies that were in the room with us because they wanted some of the things we had.
Yes.
We wanted some of the things they had. So it really is, for any size company, it's a big deal. And again, I want to bring it back for this audience and remind you that Carl wasn't the big company. Carl was in the room representing his organization because he applied to do so. Full stop. You can apply.
You can apply. And I get calls every now and then about, hey, we really want to be a tech pioneer. What should we know? And I've had small companies, like 5-employee companies. I said, look, you should do this, this, and this. You need to make sure that you understand the alignment. You need to make sure that you need to be ready to do the work. And some of those companies have been accepted as tech pioneers. And so it's an open call. It's something they're very interested in. It started out with 2 companies, and I forget the year, but the 2 companies were Google and Autonomy. And since then they so Sergey and Larry were coming to
Tech
Tech Pioneer
Pioneers.
meetings. They were the first, the first cohort of 2 companies, and it's grown into a really important part of the ecosystem.
So I have a couple of other questions for you, but Tara, I just wanted to check and see, are there any other questions out there?
Not right now, but we've just sent a message asking everyone to submit their final questions for you.
Awesome. Okay, so Carl, you've been doing this for a couple of years.
Yeah.
What do you wish you would have known when you were starting this process and a new tech pioneer?
I did not understand the full breadth of the organization. As you presented earlier, I was like, oh, Tech Pioneer, like this is going to be really cool. And then I got introduced to the advanced manufacturing platform and this amazing team there. And then that took me into, future of the workforce subgroup. And I still felt like, even my last couple of meetings I was going to as a Tech Pioneer, I was still learning about new opportunities, new things. I'll double down on your plug on the website is the amount of content that is freely available on the website that is updated and out there. Had I known about that before, I think I could have been much more prepared. And I think that was a common thing with the Tech Pioneers is they're like, wow, I can't wait to go to that meeting next year because I was so not prepared. I thought I was prepared, but then I can come in, I can really do well.
Okay, so we have another question. What is the sense of where WEF is going to continue offering new ways to build synergies among companies? I am going to say that they are building on this. Like, I'm sorry, that was a rude moderator response because I should have said, Carl, as my guest, what do you think?
No, I'd love to hear your answer, and then I can just,
Yeah. Again, I do not want to reinforce negative stereotypes, but I know that the forum was seen as an organization that was very academic, very theoretical, a lot of talk, no walk. And I fundamentally believe that they are focused and doing everything that they can to drive change. The creation of Tech Pioneers happened obviously many years ago, if Google was one of the first. The Global Innovators is a new group. And this unicorn, to me, the acknowledgement that smaller companies are likely the ones to have the biggest impact in the future, to me, that is a huge step forward. I think maybe the question that we should be asking is, when are companies going to realize how much their participation will drive the activities of the forum and step in and engage?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I got to be part of the Global Innovators creation. And it was exactly as you said, is the forum stepped back and they said, okay, we've got the large companies and we've got the Tech Pioneers. The Tech Pioneers are on a 2-year program and then they disappear. And so the idea was, how do we create these other categories of companies that these companies can grow with the forum and continue to contribute and fill in that continuum. And then the second thing, I've said that almost those exact words to so many people, which is, if you're at a big company and you're not happy with things that you're hearing, then go and be heard, contribute, step up and let your voice be heard.
Karen, we do have a couple of other questions.
Awesome.
The first question, I think this is for Carl, is how much time does, in quotes, the work involve?
It is, it's not an additional 40 hours a week, but it's not 30 minutes a week. I mean, you have to carve out time. There were times that I would get a call and they'd say, hey, we need to get a group together in Geneva next week to hammer something out. Can you come over on Friday? And okay, let me see if I can make that happen. It was, it's a fair amount of work. But one of the things I wanted to ask Karen is how she managed to get the rest of HP involved, because we were a 60 company startup and I got my VP of HR involved, and I got other people involved to help them think. So, if you want to put in 40 hours a week on your regular job and 40 hours a week on the forum, you can do that. But I would say it's really find what you want to work on and then commit to that and contribute at the level that you feel comfortable with.
I think the other thing I would add is, and I'll answer your question in a second, Carl. The other thing I would add is, although it is a lot of work, you're doing it because it's work that will further your business, your industry, the things that you are already passionate about or already working on. So yes, it's work. It's work to do anything that we do. And in a way, this is more, there's more momentum with this work because you have the thoughts and ideas of completely diverse groups of stakeholders.
And I just, one other thing to add to that is, it's not different work, right? Like, from a tech pioneer, they wanted to know about how we were changing robotics in new industries, right? Which was my day job, which is what the whole purpose of the company was to solve these huge problems in the food supply chain and food shortage and food wastage through robotics. So it really was me putting in the time to evangelize what I was evangelizing about in my day job.
True. To answer your question, Carl, I will say it probably is a little harder to get a big organization involved because it is so big. And it takes an evangelist. It takes somebody who's going to understand what's going on, who's going to knock on doors and present the opportunities. So when you and I were working in the advanced manufacturing group and we started talking about future of work, I went to our chief human resources officer and outlined that for her and said, this is something that the forum is working on. We're looking for a working team to do this. I know we are having conversations internally with our HR group about skilling and upskilling and reskilling, and we had gone through a whole project on our own. And so she said, yes, this is going to help us. This is going to help position our company as a company who cares about this, who's investing in it, because we do and we are. So, but it does take an evangelist. The other observation I will share in working with the forum in general, especially for a big company, is that they're historically very hierarchical, which means their sole focus is on the heads of state and the CEOs and, making sure that they are engaged. When in reality, a lot of the work happens with the people who aren't the CEO. And so they're getting better at that. These working groups that they have, we keep mentioning the name Francisco. Francisco was the head of the industry that we worked on. Phenomenal. And he really kept everybody together. But even with that, one of the things I did that I think helped our success at HP was to make sure I was pulling together and connecting with my peers. So I had somebody from Johnson & Johnson. I had somebody from Stanley Black & Decker. We were working on similar issues and similar topics and making sure we stayed connected and we could filter back and forth. There was alignment with our CEOs. That meant that the work that was going forward represented what they wanted, but they weren't the ones doing it, which we all know is often the case. Any other questions? So I'll ask you one last question, Carl.
We do have one question, Karen.
Okay.
If you'll be providing links to the site for those
I will be providing links to the site. So because everything that I shared with you is free, you can all find it. However, I know what a pain that is. And so I have actually pulled together a little one-pager with direct links. So direct links to the agenda blog, to information about tech pioneers, where to apply, to strategic intelligence, my favorite resource of all, as well as where to submit your blog articles and what is going to be a successful article if you want to submit thought leadership or contributed content. I'm also happy to share this deck. I don't know that there's a lot in here, but if you like the pretty pictures, I'm happy to share this too.
Thank you very much.
So Carl, any last thoughts about the forum? Any words of wisdom you would want to share with folks?
My advice is, if you're passionate about whatever your day job is and using that to move forward, to take the problems you're trying to solve on a day-to-day basis to a larger stage, the forum is absolutely that opportunity, and they'll be receptive, but it is, you do have to lean in and really make sure that you're contributing to get the maximum output there.
And my parting wisdom is know what's available. And we just showed you a whole bunch of things that are available. And I know it is difficult. It has ingrained everybody, this confusion between the organization and the annual meeting. I want you to separate that, because the value, if you never attended that annual meeting, the value and the opportunities and the potential, especially here in the Silicon Valley for small companies, for startups, for prepping your executives when they prepare for an event, or getting visibility from them with some of the thought leadership opportunities. It's all there. It's all there. And I am happy to share it with anybody who wants to know more.
Karen, Carl, thank you so much for joining us on Friday Forum to talk to us about the World Economic Forum and all the opportunities. I know we're all frantically running off to find all those applications and amazing strategic insights. So thank you for joining us on the Public Relations Society of America Silicon Valley Chapter's Friday Forum. And we will be posting a recap and all those links Karen shared on our website at PRSASiliconValley.org, on our blog. You can subscribe to our newsletter, and you can follow us on all the social media channels that are linked at the bottom of that site. So thank you again. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks so much.